to warfare in the age of robots and drones.
Hi everyone, I'm Cal Spriggs, and for my many sins, I get to moderate this panel. Managed to dodge my other 4 panels today. All right, so starting off, we'll go with introductions. We'll start with Larry, who hopefully all of you already know.
Hi, I'm Larry.
Hi, Larry. Hi, Larry.
Larry Korea, wrote a bunch of books and stuff. I actually am not an expert on this topic, but we do have experts on this topic. But I do write about this stuff quite a bit. My experience with drones and robots is very limited. I did military contracting, and I was a finance guy. I was an accountant, so I can actually tell you how much it costs to maintain the servers. As far as the actual use of the drones, I know very little, except I can write them pretty good.
Hi, I'm Aaron Collette. I am also not an expert. I'm honestly surprised I got picked for this panel, because we have a Navy officer here, and we've got Larry here, and I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just
a military officer.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I don't know anything about you. So I'm just an enthusiastic amateur. I'm a big sci-fi nerd, geek, dork, and drones are cool.
Jim?
All right, Jim Curtis. I've got not enough books out. I do have a military science fiction RimWorld. There are copies down in the vendor room if anybody wants them. Naval officer, 22 years. Naval flight officer, 23 years working for the government doing defense contracting and running test and evaluation for multiple systems over the last dozen years. So a little bit of background in using some of these things.
I'm Cal Spriggs, and like I said, I'm the moderator for my many sins. I'm also a U.S. Army combat veteran. I've worked with robots and some drones, and yeah, that's me. So going into it, first off, they mentioned robots and drones, and I wanted to open to the panel. What's the difference? Because there are differences. Jim?
First of all, let me get pedantic here. Okay, a drone is not actually a drone. There are UAVs, which is unmanned aerial vehicles, UUVs, which are unmanned underwater vehicles, and USVs, which are unmanned surface vehicles. So that's one distinction. A robot is a mechanically controlled device that is driven by a function somewhere remote to it. So what everybody knows about is the EOD robots. That's the most common version. There are other versions, including actual underwater robots.
I can't follow that.
Sorry.
No, I think Jim actually covered it. Okay, no, so basically we have the actual experts, but what we'll do is I'll talk about how to write this stuff. So usually in fictional purposes, honestly, depending on the genre you're writing in sci-fi, these are commonly used elements. Like in an upcoming one that I'm writing with John Brown. You guys all know John Brown, right? So we're doing a collaboration right now on a science fiction series that we actually plotted here on a panel at LTUE a few years ago. It was one of those panels where you guys in the audience throw out ideas and we plot them on a board. And it was a sci-fi story, but we have a lot of drones and robots in that. We have one character, that's her specialty. And she actually kind of walks around with this team of little robots that are ready to kill everyone on her command. And because of her personality, they're all chibi, they're all cute, and they're like little flying death swarms of robots. And so usually, like I guess fiction, drones are usually manually operated and robots are autonomous. It's kind of the fiction. I know it's not in real life. I'm just saying in fiction, that's usually how it's set up.
Yeah, that's exactly where the distinction seems to be in fiction is autonomous versus remote control.
Now, in real life, autonomous is scary as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so playing off of that, let's kind of work down some of the strengths and weaknesses that you see in both robots and autonomous drones. Do you want to start?
Okay. Autonomy is a major issue. And I'll just throw this out. You can go look at it for research purposes. Twice drones have actually been used in combat. First was in Vietnam. Second time was in the first Gulf War in 1991. Go look up, it's called SCATHE, S-C-A-T-H-E Mean, M-E-A-N. Those were ground-launched and air-launched UAVs that were used as drones to go in and take down Baghdad's air support. That's one. Now, the issue with autonomy is you have to be able to know exactly where you are for an autonomous robot to work correctly. So as a science fiction writer, if you're playing with a environment where there is counter, let's say, electronics, the first thing they're going to try to do is kill those UAVs. Either make them lose where they are or knock down the communication. And I'll leave it at that for now.
Well, that kind of comes into an example that real world example that I pulled up doing some research. The Uran 9 Robo Tank. It is a Russian tank that was fielded in Syria last year. It's freaking hilarious. I mean, this thing is sci-fi to the gills. It's a fully autonomous tank that drives around. They can give it a signal to tell it to do stuff. It hears gunfire, it turns, it engages. It's got anti-tank rockets, it's got thermobaric rockets that are basically giant fireballs that hit. This thing is awesome, and it is so crappy. Like, if you Google it, the first 9 articles are about how horrible it is. It drives into walls and gets stuck. It can't drive in a straight line. It loses track of where it is. They try GPS location. It's horrible. It's total garbage. And the Russians fielded it with this huge fanfare saying this was going to be the future of warfare, and it just miserably, miserably failed. And they brought it back to Russia, and they're like, we're going to fix everything, and it's going to be better than before. So yeah, tons of entertainment value in looking that up.
So the interesting thing about autonomy is, all right, these programs, they can react faster than humans, and that's their benefit. But we have yet to come up with a processor that processes better than the human brain. And so if we rely on strict autonomy, you can very easily get devices that react instantly to the wrong object. For example, a lot of these drones just absolutely suck at pattern recognition. Humans, it's built into our evolutionary physiology. It's why we see shapes in clouds, why we see faces on Mars, because we are primed to recognize shapes. Machines don't do that. If you've ever done the CAPTCHA on websites where they've got the little squiggles and the lines and the whatever, and you think that's just garbage, it's not. A lot of these devices, they actually see patterns which aren't there. I don't know how they think a squiggle and a whatever, equates to a starfish, but it does, and it's been replicated. And so if you've got a battery of these things, not only can they be wrong, but they can be wrong across the board, and they can be wrong in fractions of a second. Which is why, at least in the United States, Russia is a completely different beast, but in the United States, there is I don't even know what level it is, probably Pentagon level, where they have said autonomous devices will not execute a kill order. A human has to be in the loop. A human has to make that distinction. There's a classic example from 1983, I think. There was a Russian commander of a missile silo, and I don't remember his name, I'm sorry. But his instruments told him that there was an
And drop off.
And drop off. Me and Jim were having a conversation about this at lunch.
Okay, well, you know more about it, take it.
2 panels with him.
Oh, okay. So what it was is there was a guy who was there was a Russian early detection launch system. It was satellite based.
They fielded the new one.
Yeah, and so they were watching for American nuclear launches, and but it was as usual, like quality Russian technology, and it came
More
up.
vodka.
So this guy saw this, and he got an alert that the Americans had launched one ballistic missile at Russia, and he's like, okay, the Americans aren't going to launch one ballistic missile at Russia; they're going to launch a couple hundred. This is obviously a glitch, and it's a new system. And then a minute later, it came back that the Americans had launched 5. And he's like, okay, I'm a little nervous, but that still seems kind of stupid. So he's like, so his job, though, is supposed to alert the Kremlin. And the thing is, the people there was actually, I can't remember the general's name in charge, but the guy who was currently in charge was paranoid and like was ready to nuke the crap out of the U.S. This guy was like ready to freaking go. I can't remember his name. This guy was like, let's nuke. He's very enthusiastic. So this guy was like, I don't want to call him. So this dude actually held the fate of the world in his hands for a couple minutes there. He's like, no, I need a system's crap. And he didn't call it in. And it turned out it was a glitch. And when he did his report and pressed it to the superiors, originally his superiors said, good for you. Thank you for not destroying the Earth. However, when you congratulate one person in a communist system, you have to punish someone else. And the people who would be punished for the mistake were the high levels party, well, the scientists were all members of the party. And they went to punish them, like, oh, we can't punish them. They're more valuable than you. So then they went back and ruined the guy.
You go to Gulag.
For not destroying the Earth. And so yeah, you can actually look this up. It's actually a very interesting case. And he had a nervous, he got ran out of the military, had a nervous breakdown, and died broken penniless. Yeah. So,
but because there was a human in the loop, he prevented World War III. Whereas if it had been automated, it would have been, no, Americans are attacking, launch.
Which is War Games, the movie War Games. If anyone hasn't seen that one, that's actually, we're probably actually getting into a generation that hasn't. That's the basic premise is you have a Skynet type computer that is fielded by the U.S. military that decides that it's at war and the only way to win is to nuke everything. So.
And I grew up next to Castle Air Force Base, which was the SAC base of the West Coast of the United States. I'm really glad that guy didn't do that.
My dad worked at NORAD, so yeah.
Yeah, we're both. We wouldn't be here.
Yeah. So, and that actually kind of plays into future things. So we've talked about current policy is we want humans in the loop. In the future, people may be not so ethical, or maybe people might feel a whole lot more secure in what they have. Do you think there is a future in which Skynet, or on the other end of the spectrum, DeHack, like from David Weber's DeHack series, do you think that's a possibility?
Can I take this?
Yeah.
Okay. Prior to December 7th, there was actually a dictate that said submarine warfare against commerce by the United States is forbidden. We will not do it. It is not ethical. That's just, no. And then the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And we found ourselves at war with the Japanese. And suddenly, that dictate disappeared. And it was then decided, you know, we really need to attack their shipping. We need to engage in this level of submarine warfare.
You had me confused there because you didn't say the year.
That was
Wait, what? Oh, no, sorry.
Well, okay. Yeah. Sorry.
The trade war just got real.
And so what I'm getting at here is, I'm pretty sure the official policy is we will never ever give an autonomous unit the power over life and death until we need it.
And I think another thing in there too is a lot of that policy is executive level driven. So if you get a politician or a president at a certain height who decides, well, I don't necessarily want a human in the loop. I don't want a human in there who will say no. A drone has no morality. A robot has no morality or ethics. And I think that's a danger that as authors, as writers, you should definitely feel free to explore when, you know, hey, I want my army of faceless clone troopers that are going to take over the Republic and turn it into the Galactic Empire. Hey, robots do that way easier. Why don't we just do that?
Well, and the thing is, the technology, it might not be us necessarily. We're talking about us, and we're putting like this within a moral framework. But like we're writing sci-fi here. We don't know what the future is going to hold, and there are a lot of places that are not quite, you know, governed by morals, and they don't really give a crap, and they're not really accountable to anybody. And the technology is already out there, and it's getting cheaper and better. And so it is a matter of time before somebody out there does actually just build killer robots.
And Syria is a great great example of where some of the stuff is going. There was a Russian base two years ago where the ISIS basically launched 100 drones all carrying small explosives and blew up this massive installation.
There's a guy here who was there.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, calling you for a minute to tell us about this?
Yeah, well, specifically Syria. So I was with the U.S. Army in Iraq, but then I was also with the Syrian Democratic Forces in Syria. And so I had some experience with drone warfare in both places, actually. If you want to know, I'll share a couple of experiences really quick. If you want to know a way how somebody without technology can potentially fight drones. When I was in Iraq, I was part of an accident. I will skip over most of the details of the story. There was a misunderstanding, and we moved a shipping container from one place to another. When it got moved and we realized it was the wrong one, we didn't want to move it again because we didn't want to destroy anything, damage equipment inside. We were just going to wait for somebody to come looking for it, and they did. A lot of people came looking for it because that shipping container was full of parts that were used to maintain Predator drones. And they couldn't launch any more Predator drones until they located that container. So 20 minutes later, there were a lot of generals, colonels, really high-ranking people, and they were all very angry. It was a very uncomfortable situation. But temporarily, because of a mistake, because the equipment wasn't there, the entire U.S. Predator drone fleet on that base was grounded. But in Syria, ISIS started using drones while I was there in Syria. In fact, me and like 30 Kurds at one point, there was a drone coming over the hill, and we all were shooting at it, trying to shoot it down. 30 of us with AK-47s, and we could not hit the thing. Like, these things are hard to fight because they're small and they're up high. We also saw a lot of, sometimes we would hear Predator drones pretty often. They are really difficult to spot. They are so high up there that sometimes we could spot them, but most of the time we couldn't. And even though you can't see them, like, they can probably read the emotions on our faces. And if you're fighting against that, that's terrifying. And anyways, some of my personal experience. But I don't want to go on.
That emotional part too, as writers, I've been writing some stuff where I've got counterinsurgency stuff, and the good guys are the insurgents, and they're being pursued by drones, and that's pretty terrifying when it's this little thing that you maybe won't even see, or it's something like you mentioned, way up high that you can't even see, but it's tracking you and bringing enemies in on you. That's want to talk about feeling powerless. That's pretty terrifying.
Have you seen the really high resolution picture from China? It's been posted on Facebook. It's some, I don't know how many thousands of whatever. I'm going to use the wrong terminology, but it's one of these, you click on it, and it's from a surveillance drone, I think, and you see a good chunk of the city, and you can zoom in and zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, and you can't quite see the expressions on people's faces, but you can make out what they're wearing. And it is just fantastic amount of resolution today.
195 gigapixels.
Say again, please.
195 gigapixels.
195 gigapixels.
Sounds like
And you want to talk about bad actors? China is like the head of the, I'm going to use this awesome technology for really terrifying things. Look at what they're doing in the I'm going to butcher the name, the Uyghur provinces out in their western areas.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. They have drones flying around, they have facial recognition, they have cameras everywhere. They're doing complete biometric scans of basically everyone. Your ID card carries not just how much you're worth monetarily, but how much your social credit is, where they evaluate who you associate with in order to determine whether or not they can disappear you.
They basically took person of interest and made it into a playbook.
1984 is alive and well there. So, but yeah.
When you think about the combat capabilities of some of this stuff, like with facial recognition software, and basically, so if you have like a high value target that you're looking for, like, or a person of interest, there's no reason they can't have an autonomous device left somewhere they think you might eventually show up. And they could just sit there on battery power or even plugged in or solar panels waiting for you to show up, and then looking like, oh, we're 88% certain that's you by facial recognition software, and they're like, that's good enough.
Yeah, there was a...
flip your off switch and you never saw it.
Azerbaijan, there was an incident where the Israelis were demonstrating a drone. It's a little quadcopter about this big, carried a block of C4 inside of it. And it's a recon drone, but the C4 was there just in case. And basically, they were demonstrating it to the Azerbaijani military, who were like, hey, let's test out the demo feature. Hey, look, there's an enemy car. We're just going to land it right on top of that Humvee and detonate it. Oh, hey, we accidentally killed 3 military guys from the other side. But it was just a demo. So yeah, it's
Demo.
yeah. They did get the contract. Violation of UN ceasefire and all that, but they did get the contract. But yeah, and that kind of ties into something I also wanted to talk about: drones and robots. The idea of putting the risk forward on machinery is nothing really new. I mean, when you look back at fire ships back in the Greek era, landmines in World War II, the V-2 rocket was the first example of a full drone that I would bring up. And that, as far as I know, did the V-2 even have any electronic components? It was purely mechanical.
No, it was
jet power.
mechanical, fire and forget.
Exactly, and I mean, you can do quite a lot. We're not just talking science fiction. You can do a whole lot with mechanical or magic, as Larry does.
Oh yeah, I use magic robots. They were
which is freaking awesome.
in fact, because it was 1930s, and so I wanted them to be able to talk, but it was very much robots just giving living commands. They literally had a record player inside with several records, and it would actually change the record, and then you'd hear the needle come down, and it would like, stop, or it would shoot. It would like play the next. It was awesome. It was a great scene.
You guys want to bring up some other examples or ideas?
One of the things you can do, and this is not PC technology or comment, but is in the UAV world, USV world, UUV world, it's called master and slave. You have one primary unit, and you have X number of slave units that work off of. How many people saw the IBM demonstration at the Olympics with the drones, or the UAVs? Okay, they were only actually controlling about 10% of those. The rest of them were actually geographically orienting to that master in that group. And that's how they are going to do the swarms. So, once again, you have to figure out how to defeat that technology. Now, you know, going forward, what do you want to use? You know, you can either do it mechanically, you can do it physically, you can do it electronically, or you can take control of the other side's drones.
Cyber warfare is
a
the big vulnerability, I think, in electronic drones. If they're taking a signal from elsewhere, whether it's orders on where to go or it's signal on where they are or something like that, then if you can disrupt that signal, you can really mess them up. Or if you can hack them and take them over. That's what Iran did with the Shadow UAV 10 years ago, almost, I think, where they basically told it, hey, you're flying straight up and down, and they caused it to nosedive right into Iran.
And that was because the Air Force did not have the
RTV
because they were afraid it would crash.
Yeah. So encrypted signals, as a just kind of generic note, encrypted signals don't go as far very well. Generally speaking, if you want to encrypt something, you make it more complicated, it's across more frequencies, so it just doesn't push as far. So if you're trying to control something at long range, if you want to control it at long range, you use a simpler signal, which is also easier to hack.
Yeah, the way it was explained to me was that you have a tube, you can only squirt so much information down at a time. And you know, otherwise you plug your tube.
Yeah. Well,
how many techniques have we got in the room? How many people have played with layer 1 TCP/IP? Okay, quite a few people. All right, back up for a second here. TCP/IP is the basis of internet communication. You have a pipe that you pass the data over, the internet. Once you fill that pipe over 50%, you get what's called error correction, which actually will go over the signal. When you encrypt, you're pushing a larger amount of data that's encrypted, so now the handshake becomes much longer. So what happens is that type gets filled up quicker.
In layman's terms, it's two people at either ends of a hallway shouting at each other, "Did you hear what I hear? Did you hear what I said?" And as they shout back and forth, you get these echoes and reverberations of them talking over each other and losing what they're talking about.
And now they're encrypted, they're speaking in two different
Yes.
languages
Yeah.
and using a code
They're
book.
changing languages mid-word.
There is actually a company right now up in Indiana that is working on a system to go in and capture the MAC address for any drone anywhere. And that's classified or unclassified communication. And there are a lot of people really interested in that technology. Mainly law enforcement and FAA at this point in
Well,
the US.
they shut down the London Heathrow Airport with
Yep.
a drone for, what, 72 hours or
Yep.
something? One drone, one hand-powered remote-controlled drone bought off the commercial market, shut down one of the largest airports in the world. Not armed, not military. Dude bought it up at a hobby store. They still haven't found the guy. They still don't know what his motive was. He shut down the largest airport in the world, one of the largest airports in the world.
He'd flown American Airlines and he was upset.
Well, no, then he would have shut down O'Hare.
Oh yeah,
Or Dallas.
So that's something you can actually use,
Totally buying it.
is that one UAV, USV, UUV can stop an assault, or it can basically make an assault go, wait a minute, let me figure out what's going on here.
Well, another example is the Israelis. They are really, technically speaking, at the pinnacle of a lot of UAV tech.
Yeah.
Their squad level units at this point have a quadcopter that they launch to search rooftops while they patrol down alleyways. So they can identify snipers, so that they can locate spotters, that kind of thing, detect ambushes, and that's at the squad level. Whereas the U.S. military, we have a single Shadow UAV per platoon sometimes. A lot of times, if that's fielded and if they have power and if they have the batteries for it, they're lucky. I've been with some of the units training with them, and if they even know how to launch the stupid thing, that's a win sometimes. But yeah.
I believe this is still on topic, says it's the age of drones and robots. So one thing that I'm noticing you guys are focusing on are wireless communications. But I'm thinking of Michael Z. Williamson's Freehold world, where everything's advanced technology, say on Earth, where it's densely populated. There aren't going to be UAVs flying down the roads. But what he's got are hardwired mechanisms that are built into every building, in every entranceway, in every spaceport. So now you don't have something that's flying. You have thousands upon thousands of sensors and cameras. And these are other things that, someone, he's got an assassin that's trying to get past it. He's got an entirely different set of concerns that, sending up an EMP or something may not entirely touch.
Yeah, but if it's a wired system, you can also tap into it. And that's sort of the trope in science fiction, infiltrating the enemy base. Hey, look, here's a computer.
Yeah.
I'm in.
And I actually I've written in the Freehold universe. The last one was ancient history, but I just did one where I'm writing a guy who's a professional duelist who got put out of work during the Freehold invasion, and he's kind of pissed off about being out of work. He shoots people for money, so what does he do to people he doesn't like? Well, there's a thing, and I have a UN building, but it's all hardwired like that, and he just shoots them up the front steps. Because specifically, he's like, well, I can't go through the door. Oh, okay. and because the thing about being hardwired is it's static. And the thing about any static defense is you can go around it.
And if you look at the robots, you look at the EOD robots, some of the
Yeah.
others, they're also wired. So you have a limitation of how far.
Oh yeah, because the EOD robots, they're very specific. You don't want to be bouncing signals.
Yeah.
Well,
What
it
could possibly go
depends. It depends on those. Having used some of those, most of the time, you're trying to use the cable if it's a short distance. But if it's a big explosive, you don't want to use a cable because you only got about 50 feet.
We all know
So-
the same guy that does this for a living.
Yeah, and I've done, yeah, I did route clearance in Iraq.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
well, so the thing that got me with this, that actually blew me away, was it's an Xbox controller.
Yeah, oh yeah,
It's
yeah,
literally
they're sitting
an
there.
Xbox controller.
And yeah, when we had to select guys for my platoon when I was doing route clearance, it was like, okay, you are a Call of Duty nerd. Get over here. You're doing the training. And
Well, I mean, it actually
when
makes
you're
sense.
gone, your battle buddy, who is also the nerd, is getting on it. Same for the Crow system, which is also technically a robot. Crow is I can't remember, crew remote operated weapon system.
Yeah.
That's it. It's a robot pedestal you mount on top of a vehicle in place of a turret. You put anything in there from a 249 squad automatic weapon up through a Mark 19 fully automatic grenade launcher, which is freaking amazing. And all it is, you got an Xbox controller and a screen, and that ties up into the turret that has like night vision, thermals, all kinds of awesome stuff. And he's sitting there like he's playing Call of Duty. Oh, we're taking fire. And done.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It counters for when you're going across terrain. It's excellent, and it's all on this little Xbox controller.
Yeah, so you're not screwing around, you're training.
Yeah.
When he's fighting to be the guy who got to be the gunner, whereas normally when you're the gunner, it sucks because you're bouncing around in the turret, you're getting beat to hell. Whereas when
You're the guy the snipers
yeah,
can all shoot at.
yeah, when you're sitting there doing the Xbox controller, it's like playing video games and getting paid for it. So
Ender's Game.
yeah, Ender's Game.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. You have kids who have been playing since high school or before. They've got the muscle memory built in. The controller is customizable. Hey, let's just go ahead and use that. And hey, you know, when Mom used to say you can't make a living playing video games, she was wrong.
Whole new perspective on spawn camping.
Learn to D, noob.
We'll get to it.
Oh, first, I was just going to say, I was reading an article that the Navy replaced all their periscope controls with Xbox controllers, and they said it saved them roughly $21 million per
Training. A lot of times it's the training value too, because and that's a big part of drones too is cost. But training value. Some of the smaller UAVs, they're trying to do that instead of a joystick because there's very few PC gamers in the younger generations. There's a ton of console gamers. I'm a PC gamer and it hurts my heart.
I'm a console peasant.
So, were you planning on going into the idea of where the military had to crack down on the purchase of commercial-made Chinese drones?
That comes back to the encryption thing because a lot of there's two parts of that actually. The encryption thing, most of the civilian market drones are not encrypted. So the big fear was Joe Soldier buys this thing, they're going to use it in combat, the signal's not encrypted so somebody else could take it over, ISIS or Russians being more likely since they love hacking, could take it over and then track that signal back to the squad or just take it over and use it. The other half of that is there's been a lot of infiltration throughout the military and civilian sectors with black market Chinese parts that are designed to hack. So you buy this chipset for your computer, you install everything on production of that computer. Awesome, but there's a little tiny microchip in there that a Chinese hacker with their Chinese military had added in the factory that completely opens up that computer to anything.
If anybody owns Lenovo,
Yeah.
just saying.
There's been a few big incidents of that, and there was actually a Forbes article about Amazon being hit, that everything that Amazon put onto one of their huge servers was pirated, and then Amazon said, no, we're fine. But yeah, it's pretty scary.
So the day after Boston Dynamics puts a gun on a horsey robot, and we find out they use Lenovo computers, we're all dead.
Those videos are 5 to 10 years old
I know.
out of Boston Robotics. So,
We had one question back there, and then I'll get to you.
Oh, I was just, I wanted you to elaborate on how you would then take kids who grew up playing Call of Duty, these war games, and how you can make them become soldiers.
There's a Bruce Willis movie, Replicants, was that?
Surrogates?
Surrogates. Where it's a brief part of the movie, but you see a whole bunch of soldiers who are like going through combat as drones. They're fully robotic, bipedal, carrying guns and blasting away at each other. You don't know who they're fighting, if they're fighting humans or not, but it was basically video games. Guardians of the Galaxy 2, I think it was, with the golden people. They even have like the Atari noise in the background as they're flying around and killing each other. What was the Toys with Robin Williams, where they literally took kids and put them in, control of these little drones that were going to try and murder people. Sorry if I interrupted you.
No, that's all right. Some of you have drones in your house right now. Anybody that's got a vacuum cleaner, robotic vacuum cleaner?
Yeah, if anyone's worried about robots taking over the world, just watch how a cat destroys a Roomba.
Yeah.
we have a deaf cat that we call Panzer Kitty, because it hops on top and it turns it on and it rides it around the house.
See, I want to do a thing there where you, like someone in a book, weaponize a Roomba as a murder weapon.
Wait. So what you're saying is that when robots take over the earth, cats will be behind it.
Yes, cats will be the intelligence.
So where Mankas and wars come in.
Whenever there's a new football wrinkle, offense or defense, it takes a while. They break it down. They counter it. And so you mentioned drone swarms, scary things, and can't escape the eye in the sky. What's the counter going to be in terms of author or science to the scary of that?
Okay, there's an organization called JETO that for a number of years was looking at countering IEDs. Say again?
Joint IED Defeat Organization.
And we were part of that organization. When something would come in, we would figure out a counter to it. It took 3 to 4 months because one of the things we had to do was to make sure that whatever our counter wasn't going to hurt our guys. So we'd put it back in the field about 4 months after the initial hit. And then for about 30 days, you watch the IED attacks go to 0. And then they'd start ramping back up because they would then counter the counter. But they didn't have to play by the rules that we did. One of the things you could do is something as simple as a net. If you have a low altitude drone, say UAV flying around, throw up a net. They are not set up to recognize patterns like squares. Another thing you could do would be to put up a generator, white noise generator, a swept frequency generator, anything to interrupt the communications where you're going to fill that pipe up. And the other option is there are garments being developed that will basically shield human body heat.
And if the drones are discriminating, because we touched on the facial recognition, as long as they don't have a really low level, like he mentioned, if they're looking for someone specific, there are all sorts of ways you can defeat facial recognition. No, not really. It's more of like the ratio of your eyes to your ears to your nose, and there are actually types of makeup that you can use. And it's just, the little blocks and the patterns and the things like that, which disrupt, make it hard to tell, well, where is your eye?
I did a lot of research for this for Swords of Exodus, because it was set in Paris, which is one of the cities that has more security cameras than anywhere else in the world. And what it comes down to is the way facial recognition software, most of it works. There's different kinds, but it measures, like Aaron was saying, but the way it measures it is actually through shading gradients, and it's darkness. And so the darker something is, the less likely it is to be able to differentiate the spaces. And it's actually, there was a thing that there was articles about this a couple years ago about facial recognition software is racist. I'm dead serious. Because the darker your skin, the less likely it is to be able to differentiate the shades, the shading gradients from shadow. And so it would throw it all off. But the biggest single thing in Paris actually came down to hats, hat brims, brimmed hats, because most of the things are placed at a higher elevation, And so the idea was, but the thing is, even eventually there will be one that will get you that you don't see coming. And so the main thing we did in Paris, it's a motorcycle city, so they always move via face shield helmets.
Another way is anonymity through ubiquity, which means is like if everyone looks the same, you can't pick someone out. There is actually a gentleman in Chicago, I don't remember his name, but he developed a product called You Are Me, letter U, letter R, M, E, and he sells masks of his face. And the idea is that if you want to be anonymous, you can buy, and he sells them at cost. And so you can either get like the $200 latex mask where you can get a very high resolution paper printout. And so you put it on, and because it is so detailed, then all the CCTV cameras and facial recognition in Chicago, they don't show you, they show him. And the idea is he's everywhere in Chicago.
See, I was going to go kind of the other route, and even more low tech, Guy Fawkes masks. I mean,
Same principle,
if everyone wears Guy Fawkes masks, if you know that this guy is a high value target and they're after him, and there's a rebellion, pass those things out to everyone, and they're not going to know.
This is getting better too. The technology's growing by leaps and bounds too, with height, weight, build, gait. I mean, like basically, you know, a lot. I mean, it's getting harder and harder. And so even if you're wearing a mask, they'll get to like, well, this body type only belongs to 1.2% of the population, and we just located the 6,000 people in the city that have that.
And the human brain can do some of that too from audio. Like my mother-in-law has a slight limp. I can, in the middle of the night, hear her when she's walking around the house because she's awake, and I know it's her because I hear that slight limp as she walks through the room. We're training technology to do a lot of the same things to identify those particular details. And,
I'm 6'5" and walk crow-toed, so Samaritans got me. I mean, I'm dead.
Another thing to think about is a lot of these technologies are nothing more than advancements on stuff that we've had for 50, 60, 70 years.
Well,
They're getting smaller.
And the whole point of it is not just in order to give yourself all these capabilities, but it removes the risk from yourself or from your stormtroopers or whoever's doing this. It's all on a piece of technology that is expendable. It's a camera on every corner that's relatively cheap. It costs $5 for it, and you can mount tons of those. Whereas informants or spies cost significantly more, and they can be murdered. So.
That said, you get enough unrest, like they've now broken most of the cameras in Paris.
Yeah.
So with people being able to operate these drones through technology that could be dangerous, weaponized, but it maybe feels like a video game, like you were talking about the turrets, is there any concern about people not realizing the ramifications that their actions will have on real life? That feel too much like a game and they won't realize they're expending so many bullets?
That's a wonderful thing to explore as a writer.
So you're talking about most scientists.
Every piece of technology has dangerous implications for morality. I mean, even this has you talk to any parent of a teenager and they're like, I hate this freaking thing, it's evil. So any piece of technology is going to have that. The danger may be more open in that you can kill people and all of that with it, but it's, as an author, you should be able to explore that pretty easily, yeah.
Let me just say one quick thing here. Real world, when I was working for the government, we had a number of issues where we were developing technology that we really did have to take a step back and look and see what the potential bad issues were to that technology.
Einstein never wanted to work on the bomb because he knew the implications and was terrified of them.
Yeah.
And they knew that and didn't bring him onto the Manhattan Project because he had expressed his distrust of the technology.
Well, they brought up the same concern about magnifying optics 200 years ago, because if you could shoot somebody from far away, it's less personal.
Yeah.
You know.
The aliens in the basement over DARPA, though, they're out there.
There's always scary implications. I think we got time for one last question. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, so Amazon came out with a series called Jack Ryan that couple months ago. And so one of the drone pilots there shoots and kills a guy because he was innocent, but he doesn't believe he's innocent. So how do you ensure that even with the human factor involved, we don't kill innocent people?
You can't. It's an imperfect world.
You can't.
I mean, we try people regularly in the U.S. with a quarter of your peers and find people guilty and have them executed. And then a few years later, like the FBI DNA scandal that happened recently. Hey, 18,000 DNA tests that we did, they were totally falsified. They're releasing tons of people who had been convicted, and some who had been executed, they're exonerating now, but it's a little late. Because of one guy in one lab didn't know what he was doing, and no one was checking. So it's an imperfect world.
Someone up in Massachusetts, I think, who was being paid off by the prosecutor.
Yeah, there's been cases of that. Blood spatter's another area where, this is a science.
The more technology you have, the more chance of it being corrupted.
And when you don't have technology, it's just the big strong guy is in charge, and everyone else does what he says.
This is a bummer that we got away from that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks, Cal. Give you an autograph?
So Larry's last panel, somebody asked a question, Larry didn't call on his own tech.